Madam Speaker,
20 seconds. 30.
I pray people of all stripes wake up to this spectacle and exercise their rights to put a stop to it through free speech and through fair elections. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the impeachment of President Donald J. Trump for seditious acts against America. To overturn the 2020 presidential election, Trump incited a violent assault on Congress, a treasonous betrayal of our nation. This criminal incitement left us with 5 dead, including a police officer, a desecrated Capitol, and a second constitutional crisis. His acts show contempt for the rule of law, the Constitution, and the foundation of any democracy, a peaceful transition of power. President Trump is a clear and present danger to American lives and democracy, and he leaves us no choice but to immediately remove him from office. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio
Thank you, Madam
is
Speaker.
recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield 90 seconds to the gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Hirschberger.
The gentlewoman from Tennessee is yielded 90 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I urge my colleagues to vote against impeachment of our sitting President Donald J. Trump. You can tell the American people that this is a vote to impeach upon the grounds of inciting violence and insurrection, but the American people see a double standard. They see a standard implied to those on the left who commit violence, and they see a standard to those applied to the right who commit violence. The American people see this, and they understand it. I've been here all of 1 week, and what I see instead of lawmakers who are truth seekers, I see lawmakers who are power seekers. And that's never good, never good. What a shame, what a shame. The American people are watching to see how their elected officials respond at this moment in history. Will you vote to mend, or will you vote to further divide this country? I'm urging you to use this opportunity to be the leaders the American people are seeking for such a time as this. God help us as a nation, and I pray that God will keep his hand upon the greatest nation that the world has ever seen. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve his time.
We do, Madam.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, how much time do we have, please?
The gentleman from New York has 9 1/4 minutes. And Ohio has 8 minutes. The gentleman from Ohio, 8 minutes.
Thank you.
Gentleman from New York.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Butterfield.
The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, President Trump's incitement to violently overturn the results of a free and fair election is an attack on our rule of law. Any president, any member of Congress who obstructs the Electoral College or attacks judges and the court system where there's no evidence to support their contentions undermines the public's trust and confidence in the judicial process. How do my Republican colleagues expect ordinary citizens to respect and trust the courts in civil and criminal matters all across this country? Think about that as you make this decision. Vote yes.
The gentleman's time has expired. The
impeachment.
gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York
Madam
is
Speaker, I yield
recognized.
30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Roybal Allard.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I take no joy in voting to impeach President Trump, but this president has blood on his hands in the wake of this attempted coup. The fact remains no president of the United States is above the law, and this president has sadly violated his oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. As members of Congress who have taken that same pledge, it is our duty to take this action and impeach this unfit and dangerous president. I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from California, Mr. Khanna.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 30 seconds.
I'm voting to impeach because, as Lincoln said, no grievance is a fit object of redress by mob law. But we must recognize that our hard work begins to address the real grievances and despair in left-behind communities. To be worthy of this capital that we hold sacred, to fix our broken windows and broken communities, let's finally commit to investing trillions in creating good jobs in healthcare, in education, and infrastructure for communities and places that are hurting.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from Alabama, Ms. Sewell.
The gentlewoman, Ms. Sewell, is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to support impeachment. I do so with a heavy heart and a lasting and searing memory of being in this gallery, the People's House, right up there, fearing for my life. And why? Because the President of the United States incited others to be violent, a mob of insurgencies in this House. It's unacceptable. It led to the killing of 5 Americans. Blood is on this House. We must do something about it. I ask that we move from stopping the steal to healing, but healing requires accountability, and everyone must be accountable. Who is that?
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Moore.
The gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I'm fairly new here. Actually, this is my first floor speech. But I rise to oppose this impeachment. You know, I asked my staff this morning, I said, how many times in our nation's history have we impeached a president? Well, they said up until this president, only 2 times in our nation's history. So here we are, 7 days left in his first term, and we're going to impeach a president for what reasons? For what reasons? There have been no hearings. There have been no committees. We must defend the right and protect the process of impeachment. If we pursue this, from now on, from this day forward, impeachment will always be a political process. I ask my friends across the aisle, they always talk about healing. Healing. How do we come together as a nation? Since 2016, there has been hashtags going around in our nation that said, not our president. Resist, resist. Members across the aisle have said things in public to have supporters of this president attacked and demeaned. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. Yes. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky.
The gentlewoman from Illinois is recognized for 30 seconds.
Last Friday, I sent a letter to my constituents telling the story about the violent attack on our Capitol building, which is really like the temple of our democracy. I have now taken the oath of office, the same oath of office that the President of the United States has taken, that all of us here have taken, and he has been the orchestrator of this attack. It is time to hold this president accountable. It is time, and history demands that we impeach
the gentlewoman's
Donald
time
Trump
has expired. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We would reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Himes.
The gentleman from Connecticut is recognized for 30 seconds.
The words have almost all been said. Search your soul, consider your oath. And I add 4 more words. Reflect on your legacy. My friends, which way is history flowing right now? Will Donald Trump join the pantheon of Washington, Lincoln, Roosevelt, and Reagan? Or will his 33% approval ratings and the condemnation of principled Republicans consign him to the heap of reviled demagogues with Joseph McCarthy and Andrew Johnson? Where he goes in history, you go in history, unless today you make a stand. I yield back.
Yields back. I would like to remind members to please direct their remarks to the chair. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Hawaii, Mr. Coward.
The gentleman from Hawaii is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, as a member of our armed forces, now a member of Congress, I have taken and given the oath of office many times. I will support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. On January 6th, the President violated this oath, inciting violent and deadly insurrection. Our sacred oaths are hollow without accountability. We must hold this President accountable, remove him from office, ensure he can never hold public office again. I urge my colleagues to do the same. This oath has to matter. Mahalo, and I yield back.
New York. Recognized. The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Sarbanes.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, this beautiful Capitol dome is a symbol of freedom and democracy, not just for Americans, but for people the world over. The action we take today, this impeachment, is a declaration to the world that when there is an attack on our democracy, whether it comes from without or whether, tragically, in this instance, it comes from within, we will respond to that threat and attack, and we will do what's necessary to strengthen our democracy. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2.5 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from New York, Mr. Zeldin.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am sickened and angered by what we all had to witness last Wednesday and call for the investigation and prosecution to the fullest extent of the law, every single person who participated in the violence and loss of life in this Capitol building last Wednesday. I, as a member, sit here listening to the entire debate, desperately need to better understand the two standards that are at play in this House. Why is it okay if a House Democrat calls for violence in the streets, but not if you're a Republican? Why can a House Democrat be rewarded with a gavel and a chairmanship if they're calling for physical confrontation of a Trump administration official, but they will be punished if they're a Republican? The double standards that we have seen time and time again, I need to better understand what the rules are of this House. Why is it that a committee chairman can lie to the American public about having more than circumstantial evidence that the president colluded with the Russians in order to win the 2016 election, but of course the Republicans can't and wouldn't lie to the American public about something like that? We need to better understand what these two standards are that are at play and to complete the record. Because the House Democrats are here to make President Trump the first president to have been impeached twice. So I'll complete the record. First off, in the articles of impeachment, it's written that the president gave a speech and he told his supporters to come here and that he incited this riot. And one speaker after another here on the other side of the aisle have repeated that in the article of impeachment. But we all know that this was a pre-planned attack. We all know that there was pipe bombs being discovered while the president was speaking. We all know that the Capitol perimeter was being breached during the president's speech. We know that this was pre-planned and it started while the president was speaking. Why is that not in the articles of impeachment? Why is that not being incorporated into my colleagues' remarks? To complete the record, if you want to make the president the first president to be impeached twice, well, we'll add something else to that. Thank you to the president for his efforts to defeat MS-13 in my district or to withdraw from the... Request 30 more seconds.
Fired. The gentleman yields an additional 30 seconds.
30
Did I hear
seconds.
correct?
Yes.
The gentleman has another 30 seconds.
Thank you to the president for his efforts to move the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem and recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights and to take out Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and Qassem Soleimani, to eliminate the ISIS caliphate, to enter into the historic Abraham Accords, to have an economy this time last year that was stronger than I ever remember in my entire lifetime. Yeah, we'll complete the record. And in all fairness, as the president leaves 1 week from today, let's be honest about the double standards that exist inside of this chamber. And let's also be honest that this president did a lot to make America greater than ever.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Caston.
What happens
The gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
What happens if we get this wrong is written in Lincoln's second inaugural, when one party would make war rather than let the nation survive. On December 7th, on September 11th, we came together against an enemy from without, but on January 6th, we were attacked by an enemy from within, the president who would make war with malice for all and charity for none. We must come together in unity today against that domestic threat to our Constitution. The alternative is too unbearable to contemplate. We must impeach bipartisanly, unanimously, if you have the soul.
The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Fletcher.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of the article of impeachment and in opposition to the gaslighting that is masquerading as debate in this chamber today. I was in this chamber when the president assembled and unleashed a mob to attack the United States Capitol and the United States Congress, the elected representatives of the people. By doing so, he incited an insurrection against our representative democracy itself. If that is not an impeachable offense, then what is? Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib.
The gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In Michigan's 13th, we proudly speak truth to power, even in the face of a racist in chief. Those who incited an attack on the People's House do not get to talk about healing and unity. They have torn this country apart. They have stoked the fire and then handed the gasoline to Donald Trump. Dr. King once said, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension. It is in the presence of justice." Today, we must embody those words, and we must understand that peace must be centered in truth and action. We cannot sit, Madam Chair, sit idly by after a violent attempted coup and allow lies and hate to continue. Today, we stand up for our constituents who continue to be harmed by the suppression
wishes to reserve. The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Donald Trump.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. And the gentleman from New York has 3 3/4 minutes remaining. From Ohio has 4. And the gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from North Dakota, Mr. Armstrong.
The gentleman from North Dakota is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What happened last Wednesday is an absolute tragedy. And not only are we part of dealing with it now, we were part of it then. But when emotions are frayed and tensions are this high, process matters more. It matters more now than it did before. And the reality is this: there are serious constitutional questions about these articles. And Donald Trump is going to be president until January 20th. And on January 20th, Joe Biden's going to become president. But I'll end with this. I'm going to vote against impeachment, and that's going to give me credibility at home with my base. You're going to vote for impeachment, and that's going to give you credibility at home with your base. It's easy to point at me and blame me. It's easy for me to point at you and blame you. But on January 21st, we're all going to be back here. So use that credibility. Go back and talk some hard truths to your people. I'm going to do it, and we need to do a better job. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Manning.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, this president has repeatedly lied to the American people about his election loss. He incited his followers to attack our democracy, resulting in 5 deaths. His dangerous efforts to derail the peaceful transition of power were a violation of his oath of office. This president is unfit to lead our nation and unable to discharge his duties of office. I call upon my Republican colleagues to speak the truth to their supporters and join me in holding President Trump accountable by voting to impeach. I yield.
New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mervan.
I didn't hear where it was from. The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, since the events on January 6th, I spoke with a group of ministers from Gary, Indiana, and they told me how they are praying for unity and justice in our nation. It reminded me of the moment when those of us who were on the House floor on January 6th were huddled together in a secure room after the attack. The House chaplain, Kiblin, led us all in prayer. Let us remember that moment. Let us rekindle that prayer for those 3 minutes when we were all united to preserve our democracy and justice. I support the article of impeachment so that we can move forward to do the work that our constituents sent us here to do. With that, I yield back.
Has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from New York has 2 3/4 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Ohio has 3. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio reserved. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, there are more troops right now in Washington, D.C. than in Afghanistan. And they are here to defend us against the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, and his mob. I would ask my colleagues to look at the faces of those young Americans defending democracy, defending us, and find an ounce of their courage to do the right thing, as several Republicans have, and take a tough vote for the future of democracy, for the future of our
The
country.
gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Vesey.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, let's be clear about one thing. If we were on the eve of a Republican president being sworn in, and his Democratic predecessor had said the same thing that this president said, and incited his followers, his mob, to descend up on the Capitol, we will be joining them, not making comparisons, because guess what? I don't care about no base. I care about this democracy and this country. And what happened the other day should never happen again. And we need to stand up and say and do the right thing.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, the Republican whip is prepared to close for us whenever that is appropriate, so we'll reserve until that's time.
The gentleman reserves.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 30 seconds.
I was on that floor just 1 week ago, and so today the insurrectionist-in-chief will be impeached for insurrection. It is because he failed to defend this nation against all enemies, domestic and foreign, and he stood down near the White House and told a mob of domestic terrorists to go and show your strength, be strong. You can't gain anything because of weakness. We must hold him accountable. We can heal this nation, but he must be impeached today. We must impeach Donald J. Trump as an
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. We reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio continues to reserve. The gentleman from New York.
Ask if they're prepared to close.
Is the other side prepared to close?
Yes.
Then,
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Yes.
I yield
The
3
gentleman
minutes.
from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the Republican whip, the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank the gentleman from Ohio for yielding. Madam Speaker, our nation still mourns the unacceptable violence and anarchy that took place in this Capitol last week. As we speak, arrests are still being made, and the anarchists who stormed our Capitol are being brought to justice, as should be the case. Emotions are still high, but in this moment, we need to be focused on toning down the rhetoric and helping heal this nation as we move towards a peaceful transition of power to President-elect Joe Biden next week. My prayers, Madam Speaker, are still with Capitol Police Officer Sieknick and Liebengood, who we lost, as well as all of the Capitol Police officers who risked their lives to keep us safe. They are true heroes, and they deserve all of our applause today. Madam Speaker, I've seen the dark evil of political violence firsthand, and it needs to stop. But all of us need to be unequivocal in calling it out every single time we see it, not just when it comes from the other side of the aisle. I oppose this rushed impeachment brought forward without a single hearing. And by the way, the Senate will not even take this up until President Trump is out of office. So let's keep that in mind. It will only serve to further divide a nation that is calling out for healing. Madam Speaker, many speakers today have invoked one of our nation's greatest leaders, President Abraham Lincoln. Maybe we should follow some of Lincoln's wisdom that he's imparted upon us in moments like this. As Abraham Lincoln was giving his second inaugural address in March of 1865, Lincoln issued us a challenge. This is what he said: "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all our nations." Madam Speaker, in times like these, let us not reach out to our darkest demons, but instead, like Lincoln, seek the higher ground. May God bless this great United States of America. I yield back.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we can have all this, but we have accountability too. I now yield our remaining time, 1 minute, to the distinguished Majority Leader of the House, Mr. Hoyer.
The majority of the leaders recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the chairman for yielding. This is a troubled time, a sad time. It is a time where all of us have stood almost to a person and lamented the violence and the assault on this Capitol and the assault on democracy itself. It was right to do that. But this impeachment ought to be put in the perspective of what the Republican chair of the Republican conference said it was. She said the President of the United States summoned the mob, assembled the mob, and lit the flame of that attack. There has never been, she said, a greater betrayal by a President of the United States of this office, of his office, and his oath to the Constitution. That is why we are here today. That is why we are here today, just a week before that president, at the request of the American people, will leave office. And the issue is, what do we do? The 433 of us, I believe, who are here, do on behalf of the American people to respond to what Representative Cheney described happened on the 6th of January. A mob assembled by, summoned by, and then spoken to light the flame of the attack. To stop the steal. As we sat here, exercising our constitutional duty, and to his great credit, the Vice President of the United States following the Constitution of the United States of America, notwithstanding the fact that he was opportuned by the President not to do so. That mob sent by the President to stop the steal did so for a few hours. Not the steal, but the constitutional duty that we had. And so we ask ourselves, what do we do? What is our responsibility? What should we say in light of only the Civil War as an analogy? That doesn't mean there haven't been demonstrations in Washington before and demonstrations throughout this country before. But it is the first and only physical presence other than the 9/11 attack on this nation, which came from abroad and had a plane aimed at our Capitol dome. This attack was not from abroad. It was, as Liz Cheney said, summoned, assembled, and inflamed by the President of the United States of America, who, in Liz Cheney said, words, that there has never been a greater betrayal by a President of the United States of his office and his oath to the Constitution. I pride myself as a member of this Congress who for 40 years has worked in a bipartisan fashion with many of your leaders, and do to this day. But are we to remain silent in the face of Liz Cheney's saying this was the greatest betrayal of the duty of the President of the United States in history? Are we to stand silent? Will we stand silent? Will we not stand up and say, this is not acceptable? Madam Speaker, for 4 years, Donald Trump has made no effort to hide his ambitions or his lacking of Republican principles. Not our principles, but the principles that Abraham Lincoln was just quoted as having said. Your president, our president, has never displayed those in the 4 years he's been President of the United States. He has allowed little constraint on his worst inclinations. His desire for autocracy and his glorification of violence have not been tempered, but rationalized by those who sought to profit financially and politically from their proximity to power. Upon the foundations of virtue, reason, and patient wisdom laid down by George Washington as our first president, Donald Trump has constructed a glass palace of lies, fear-mongering, and sedition. Last Wednesday, on January 6th, the nation and the world watched it shatter to pieces. There can be no mistaking any longer the kind of man sitting in the Oval Office or his intentions and capabilities. The curtain has been pulled back. The office to which he was elected could not temper or reform him. Washington's legacy was passed down to us not as written decrees. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The gentleman's correct. The House will be in order.
Washington's legacy was passed down to us not as written decrees, but understood norms. How we ought to act, how we ought to conduct ourselves. Term after term, each occupant has observed those norms out of a recognition that our Constitution's articles are not the only preservative of our democracy. For more than 2 centuries, Madam Speaker, whenever those norms were tested and strained, good and virtuous citizens on both sides of the aisle found common purpose in reaffirming those norms. But memory fades, and from time to time it must be refreshed. Madam Speaker, as the framers emerged from the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin was asked whether they had made America a monarchy or a republic. Probably all of us know this response. A republic, he answered, if you can keep it. That's the question today. If we can keep it. And the way we keep it is to say no to actions and words that do not promote the keeping of that republic. For millennia, people have understood that a republic is only as stable as, and lasting as the citizens and leaders who commit themselves to its upkeep. This president has shown us he's not committed to that project. His tweets every day have shown he is not committed to that project. Indeed, he openly disdains it and appears to prefer the alternative. But what of the rest of us? Those who have the honor and the great privilege and the weighty responsibility to represent the views of 750,000 of our fellow citizens. We in this Congress have an opportunity, no, a duty, to demonstrate our commitment, both as leaders and as citizens, to keeping America a republic that resolves its differences not through being ordered to come to the Capitol to prevent them from stealing the election, which was an absurd assertion from the very first day it was made. We cannot erase the last 4 years, Madam Speaker. We cannot turn back the clock, but we can look to the ideals and principles inherited from great presidents like Washington, like Jefferson, and yes, certainly like Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt, and from outstanding Americans like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Susan Anthony, Cesar Chavez, Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, our beloved John Lewis, and yes, RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. who taught us a lot about equality and inclusion. It's up to us to restore the vibrancy, Madam Speaker, of our democracy by reaffirming our commitment to the norms they passed on to us and entrusted to our care. But to make that possible, Madam Speaker, we must rise to this moment and not only affirm the virtues we cherish, but reject the vices we abhor. That's what I'm asking my fellow representatives on both sides of the aisle to do today. We all stood and we abhorred the violence that occurred and the threat to the very democracy that we hold so dear and swore an oath to protect and uphold. Reject deceit. Reject fear-mongering. Reject sedition, tyranny, and insurrection. Reject the demand for fealty to one man over fidelity to one's country. When I addressed the House during the debate over the articles of impeachment in December 2019, I said the following: "We need not ask who will be the first to show our courage by standing up to President Trump. The question we must ask, who will be the last to find it?" Senator McConnell, Representative Cheney, a number of other representatives who have spoken on this floor with great courage, Madam Speaker, because there is much fear of Donald Trump. There's much fear of Donald Trump's tweets. There's much fear of Donald Trump's retribution for opposition. In my view, Donald Trump demands absolute loyalty and gives none in return. I hope others will join Liz Cheney. I hope others will be honest with themselves and with their constituents. As Liz Cheney was saying, there has never been a greater portrayal by a President of the United States of his office and his oath to the Constitution. Don't dismiss that. She's the daughter of a Vice President of the United States who was the whip when I came to Congress. As she has taken a stand, I hope others will as well, Madam Speaker. Soon, the clerk will call the roll and ask for our votes. Make no mistake, this will be no ordinary roll call. This is about our country, our Constitution, and our democracy. These votes will be inscribed on the roll of history, a record of courage and of our commitment to country and Constitution, of our commitment to the rule of law and renewal of that which we inherited and hope to pass on, unbroken, unshattered. With just 7 days left in the President's term, this vote is not about timing. It is about principle and fidelity to our Constitution. It concerns the clear and present danger facing our country, not only in these final days of the Trump administration, but in the weeks, months, and years that will follow. It is about the necessity to demonstrate to this generation and to future generations the duty we share to protect our democracy every single day. Do not pretend, my friends, that it was simply those who came into the Capitol, encouraged by our President to stop the steal at any cost. And by the way, if the Vice President doesn't do my bidding and follows the Constitution, sweep him away. We know that this President would never emulate George Washington and give up his power for the good of our republic, even after losing an election. Somebody talked about a peaceful transition. There has not been a peaceful transition. I don't know what you're talking about. You're not living in the same country I am. It was just days ago that the President, after committing this terrible act, thought he had to admit that Joe Biden might, yes, be President of the United States. We know that this president neither recognizes norms nor reflects the rule of law. We know that this president is not a patriot. So I ask this House, who among us, Madam Speaker, will be recorded on the roll of history for their courage, their commitment, the Constitution, and their country? We do this today not for politics. We don't need this for politics. Georgia showed that. There was no mistake in this election. We do this today to preserve and protect this great democracy. We do it for the America we love, our America the beautiful, whose founders' sacrifices we praise in song. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. Sadly, Madam Speaker, as our current president, the appropriate words would be, who less than self his country loved, and victory more than truth. Vote for this, for America, for our Constitution, for democracy, for history. I yield back the balance of my time.
All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 41, the previous question is ordered on the resolution. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized. For what reason?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We'd ask for a roll call vote.
Pursuant to Section 3S of House Resolution 8, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by an electronic device. You ready down there? What purpose does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Ms. Strickland of Washington pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Strickland will vote yes on H-Res 24.
Gentleman from California seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Congressmember Napolitano pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Congressmember Napolitano will vote yes on H Resolution 24. And Madam Speaker, as member designated by Congressmember Costa pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Congressmember Costa will also vote yes on H-Res 24.
Gentleman from Texas seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Crenshaw, Texas, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Crenshaw will vote no on House Resolution 24.
Gentlewoman from Maine seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Custer of New Hampshire, pursuant to H-Res 8, I will inform the House that Ms. Custer will vote yea on House Resolution 24.
The gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Fleischman of Tennessee pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Mr. Fleischman will vote nay on HRES 24. As the member designated by Mr. Desjardins of Tennessee pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Mr. Desjardins will vote nay on HRES 24.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Bonnie Watson Coleman pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Ms. Watson Coleman will vote yes on HRES 24. And as the member designated by Mr. Albio Series pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Mr. Series will vote yes on HRES 24. And finally, as the member designated by Mr. Paul Tonko pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Mr. Tonko will vote yes on HRES 24.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. LaTurner, Kansas, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. LaTurner will vote nay on House Resolution 24.
Purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Presley of Massachusetts pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Ms. Presley will vote yes on HRES 24.
Does the gentleman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Adam Smith of Washington State, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Smith will vote yes on HRES 24.
I'll let them do this. Okay, you good? For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Carson pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Mr. Carson will vote yes on HRES 24.
What purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Chairwoman Johnson will vote yea on HRES 24. As the member designated by Congressman Brendan Boyle pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Congressman Boyle will vote yea on HRES 24.
gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Dr. Dunn of the state of Florida pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Dr. Dunn will vote nay on H-Res 24. As the member designated by Mr. Buchanan from the state of Florida pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Buchanan will vote nay on H-Res 24.
Pennsylvania seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Lawson of Florida 5th Congressional District pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform that Mr. Lawson will vote yes on H.R. 24.
This is the gentleman from California seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Representative Michelle Steele, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Representative Michelle Steele will vote no on House Resolution 24.
This is the gentleman from Nebraska seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Bill Raucus of Florida pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Bill Raucus will vote nay on H-Res 24.
For what purposes the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
As a member designated by Representative Cardenas pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House Representative Cardenas will vote aye on H.R. 24. As a member designated by Representative Kirkpatrick pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House Representative Kirkpatrick will vote aye on H.R. 24.
purposes, the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Young of Alaska pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Young will vote nay on House Resolution 24. Thank you.
For what purposes the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Baird from Indiana pursuant to HRes 8, I inform the House that Mr. Baird will vote no on HRes 24.
This is the gentlewoman for Virginia seek recognition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Mr. McEachin pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote yes on House Resolution 24. And as the member designated by Ms. Porter pursuant to HRes 8, I inform the House that Ms. Porter will vote yes on HRes 24.
For what purposes the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Bergman pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Bergman will vote no on final passage HRev 24. As the member designated by Mr. Lamborn pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lamborn will vote no on final passage HRev 24.
For what purposes the gentlewoman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Franco pursuant to HRes 8, I inform the House that Ms. Franco will vote yes on HRes 24. As the member designated by Ms. Bonamici pursuant to HRes 8, I inform the House that Ms. Bonamici will vote yes on HRes 24.
This is the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Alma Adams of North Carolina pursuant to HRes 8, I inform the House that Ms. Adams will vote yes on HRes 24.
Purposes the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Titus of Nevada, pursuant to HRes 8, I inform the House that Ms. Titus will vote yes on HRes 24.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. DeSaulnier pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. DeSaulnier will vote yes on H-Res 24. All right, you guys.
does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
As the member designated by Congressman Jerry McNerney pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. McNerney will vote yes on H-Res 24.
Does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Doyle of Pennsylvania, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I hereby inform the House that Mr. Doyle will vote yes on House Resolution 24.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Vella pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Vella will vote aye on H-Res 24.
Gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition.
As the member designated by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez pursuant to House Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Ocasio-Cortez will vote yes on House Res 24.
Purposes the gentlewoman from New Jersey seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Schneider pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Schneider will vote yes on H-Res 24.
Gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition.
As the member designated by Ms. Lee of Nevada pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Lee will vote yea on H-Res 24. As the member designated by Ms. Axney pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Axney will vote yes on H-Res 24. As the member designated by Mrs. Dingle pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mrs. Dingle will vote yes on H-Res 24. As the member designated by Ms. Capter pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Capter will vote yes on H-Res 24.
Purposes the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Deutsch of Florida pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Deutsch will vote yes on H-Res 24.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Hastings of Florida pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Mr. Hastings will vote yea on HRES 24.
Gentleman from Indiana seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Walorski pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Ms. Walorski will vote nay on HRES 24.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Blumenauer, pursuant to HRS 8, I inform the House that Mr. Blumenauer will vote yes on HRS 24. As a member designated by Mr. Liu, pursuant to HRS 8, I inform the House that Mr. Liu will vote yes on HRS 24. As a member designated by Mr. Lowenthal, pursuant to HRS 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lowenthal will vote yes on HRS 24. As the member designated by Mr. Peters, pursuant to HRS 8, I inform the House that Mr. Peters will vote yes on HRS 24.
that Mr. Trump should be censored instead. Once the vote is taken, it will go to the Senate, where Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, according to reports, say that he does believe Mr. Trump has committed acts and actions that warrant impeachment, but he just released a statement saying he will wait until he gets the facts on the Senate side. With us are two professors who know all about the constitutional situation. Let's talk to Philip Bobbitt. He is a professor of law at Columbia University Law School, a specialist on the Constitution. Professor Bobbitt, your view, your sense, as we're about to witness history, actually the first time in our country, a second impeachment. Your view.
Well, I think that incitement of the kind that we saw on the 6th is right down the middle lane of an impeachable offense. It's precisely what the framers had in mind. It's what Hamilton speaks of as a political crime, although it also is a statutory crime. So I think voting for an impeachment in these circumstances, when the facts are not really in doubt, is quite a constitutional act and quite appropriate.
The incitement of insurrection, let me read you that paragraph, 14th Amendment, Section 3. No person shall hold any office who, quote, engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. I mean, their argument is the president gave aid and comfort to the enemies of America by saying he loves them, that they're very special people, even after they ransacked the Capitol and caused the deaths of 5 people. And that his language over the past few months, especially trying to force Vice President Pence to overturn a duly accredited election, amount to illegalities and criminalities that incited insurrection. What's your thought on that?
I think there's a lot to be said for that, but even if you didn't have the 14th Amendment, even if we go back to the framers, go back to the founding of this country and the ratification of the Constitution, this kind of incitement against another branch of government, violence against the Congress itself, is without a doubt an impeachable offense. It is what is contemplated by bribery, treason, and other high crimes and misdemeanors, because this is just like bribery and treason. It is an offense against the Constitution, not simply against any particular civil group.
And then what would you say or to the Republicans who we've seen defend the president, you know, even though they denounce the violence that we saw? He has, 197 right now. We see on the screen the Republicans who are voting against this measure.
I'd say listen to Congressman Cheney, listen to Senator McConnell. These are very sober, very serious persons who have spoken very eloquently about incitement as an impeachable offense in these factual circumstances.
Liz Cheney, of course, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, the third-ranking Republican member of the House, saying that the President of the United States conducted the greatest dereliction of duty, her words, in the history of our nation through his actions over the past few months and his illegality, she says. In terms of the process, Professor, what next? McConnell says that he won't call an emergency session, as has been asked by Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. So next week, next Tuesday, the 19th, the day before Joe Biden is set to be inaugurated as our 46th president, the Senate is in session. Can there legally now be a trial in the Senate, even with Mr. Trump back in civilian life?
Well, there could be a trial on the 19th, as you say, but on the 20th, when the president is now a former president, Congress can't impeach someone who's not in office. Article 2, Section 4 is quite clear on that. Congress can only impeach a civil office holder, and a former president is no more a civil office holder than I'm an undergraduate. I'm a former undergraduate. So I think that's a considerable hurdle.
So do you think that there'll be a one-day trial potentially next week, or, you know, you're saying then basically you don't think he can be convicted after the 20th once he leaves office?
I think that's right. I think the Congress simply doesn't have that power.
So what do you expect to happen potentially next week? The Senate Majority Leader says he wants to hear the arguments and see what the House will present to the Senate, which they will obviously get later on today and may not consider, but could 9 in the morning next Tuesday?
I think predicting predicting this sort of political outcome is far beyond my expertise, such as it is.
All right, Professor, let me have you stand by. Josh Blakeman's a professor at South Texas College of Law who's been observing this. Professor, your view, an historic moment. Can we get back to some sense of unity, or these divisions last? And what do you think the legacy of what we're witnessing right now on the floor of the House, what will that be?
This moment truly is historic. I don't know what the path ahead is for unity. Still, roughly half of Congress voted to reject the impeachment articles. This was a procedure that was hurried. There were no hearings. This was done in quite haste. I don't know that they can do a trial in one day in the Senate next week. I actually disagree with Professor Bobbitt. I think you can have a trial of a formerly impeached officer, but that's an issue of some debate. But even if a trial is held afterwards, it will be long and drawn out, and I think would very likely detract from the first 100 days of the Biden administration. Impeachment is a violent act. It's throwing a president out of office who was elected, and perhaps throwing the president out of office who just narrowly, well, they're not narrowly, but who just lost re-election with over 70 million votes. I don't see the path forward to reconciliation. It looks, the next few months look very bleak.
So when you say you think a trial may not be possible, I mean, there's no precedent for this, but clearly if someone has, according to the House, committed impeachable offenses, that basically then, in your sense, would be there'd be no punishment to Mr. Trump. He would still receive all of the duties and prerequisites that are due to a former president in terms of staffing and Secret Service protection. And, you know, would he get off scot-free?
Oh, no, I disagree with Professor Bobbitt. I think a former president who was impeached can be tried after his impeachment. I'll give you an example. Let's say there was a president who was impeached for committing some sort of crime, and he resigns to avoid an impeachment trial. I think you would still be able to hold a trial for the person and convict him. That way all the world would know that this person was convicted. Another possible approach is to disqualify from holding certain federal offices in the future. So there's a consequence of convicting him. It's not just to punish him, but also to disqualify him from holding any sort of types of appointed offices in the future.
That seems to be something that's been motivating Mitch McConnell. The reports say that he is, quote, done with Trump, that he's furious at him. And certainly Mr. McConnell, who's going from the majority to the minority leader once the Democrats take over, has his minds on what happens 2 years from now, trying to get that back. And he's been known as a strategist, and a very wise strategist and someone who can deal with the tactics. What do you think is going on in his mind? Because you need, what, only maybe 17 Republican senators to vote for conviction, and we're told that they don't all have to be in the room, or in other words, whoever's in the room is 2/3 of whoever's in the room, not 2/3 of 100. Can you expound on that a bit?
I'm Byron Day. You've been watching Fox News coverage of this another historic day in U.S. history, and that is the second impeachment of President Donald Trump. We'll have more on this story coming up on Fox 10 News at 4 and 5. Right now, we return you to your regularly scheduled broadcast.
Have all members voted? Does any member wish to change a vote? Where's she coming from? No, can't go. On this vote, the ayes are 232, the nays are 197. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Congratulations. That's it. What now?
That's it. It's just you're replacing it.
And everybody. What?
The chair announces that pursuant to Section 3A of House Resolution 41, the House Resolution 40 is hereby adopted.
Stop right here.
Stop after it's permanent?
Stop here.